Hello, I'm Eric Roth. I'm President and CEO of Extorre Gold Mines. What I would like to do today is to give you an update on both our exploration and development activities particularly at our Cerro Moro project in southern Argentina. Cerro Moro being a very high-grade gold-silver project located in southern Argentina. What I would like to do today is to take you through where we are on the exploration, how we plan to grow the deposit, and also the plans for the future mining of this project. And as you will see, this is a very exciting story between the growth, the possibility of growing the deposit through exploration activities, and also a very high-grade deposit which will translate to very, very low cash costs at the development stage. Just to start with, on this very first slide, you will see this is a panoramic view of the Cerro Moro deposit, particularly our high-grade Escondida vein. What you can see, this is very, very flat countryside. This is sheep grazing countryside. There are no people here. Very easy to work all year round. So this is a fantastic area to have an exploration and a mining project. Now I'll take you very quickly through the capital structure of the company. The company, Extorre, has 92 million shares on issue at present. On a fully diluted basis, we have 103 million shares. The company trades today on both the TSX in Canada and also the Amex in the US. Our largest shareholders at the moment are two groups out of the US. We have Fidelity in Boston and also Oppenheimer Fund in New York. Apart from that, we have a number of shareholders both throughout Canada, the US, and also in Europe. There are obviously a lot of investors in the company because of the very high-grade nature of the Cerro Moro deposit. Just to take you very quickly through the management team, historically Extorre has been very, very strong on the exploration side. You've seen the results of that. You've seen the resource grow very significantly over the last couple of years, and I'll take you through that resource statement in a moment. Recently, we have commenced bolstering the development side of the project. We have just recruited Trevor Mulroney, who has come on board as our Chief Operating Officer. He has also just been on board for the last few months, and we will be responsible for the development activities at the project. We also have taken on board Alberto Calocchia as our country manager in Argentina. Alberto has very, very strong ties in Santa Cruz Province particularly, and will be a very significant support on, I guess, all things which are political and operational in the country. As I mentioned, we have a very, very strong exploration team. You will continue to see this team deliver results during 2012 as we go forward. In terms of Extorre's project locations, the principal projects that the company holds are in Santa Cruz Province. Santa Cruz is one of the most southernmost provinces in Argentina. It's a very pro-mining province. What you will see from this slide, slide number 5, is that we are located in a neighborhood with a number of other operations. The longest standing mine in the area is the Cerro Vanguardia operation, which is controlled by AngloGold Ashanti, one of the world's largest gold producers. In our district, in our neck of the woods, there are 3 other operations. Pan American Silver, which would be known particularly to the Canadian and US investors, is the controller of the Manantial Espejo operation. We also have to the north of us, we have the San Jose mine, which is a joint venture between Minera Andes and Hochschild. And also we have to the northwest of us, we have the Cerro Negro project, which you would be aware was the project that Goldcorp acquired from Andean Resources back at the end of 2010. So we have a district with a lot of activity, both on the mining side and also the exploration side. In fact, this area, because of the underexplored nature of the Santa Cruz province, is a very, very, very active area these days from an exploration perspective also. So here on slide 6, we're zooming into the location of the project. The Cerro Moro project is located about 80 kilometers away from the coastal town of Puerto Deseado, which has a deep water port, and a lot of people very keen to become involved in the project. This is really a project that can assist with the development economically of the region. We're about 30 kilometers away from the coast in a straight line, And as I mentioned, this is very easy access. We can work here all year round, and it's a very, very low altitude project. So logistically and location-wise, this is a fantastic place to have a project. We're also located about 80 kilometers away from a high voltage power line, which will be the future power source for the proposed mine at Cerro Moro. I will take you now very quickly through the resource, and as I mentioned at the beginning, one of the key things with the Extorre assets is very, very high grades, both in gold and silver. This is a project, you do not see many projects like this at the global scale. The resource that we announced back in November 2011, we had 1.35 million ounces in the indicated category. What you will see when you take a closer look at the numbers, 4 of the 5 zones that make up that indicated category have in situ grades of over 30 grams per ton gold equivalent. In the old scale, that's approximately 1 ounce per ton gold per ton of ore. So this is very high grade mineralization. It's both high grade gold and silver. So what you will see when you look at those resources is approximately 50% of the value of the deposit sits in gold and 50% in silver. But again, the key point to take away, very, very high grades, and at the development stage, at the mining stage, these translate to very, very low cash costs. We also have 1.05 million ounces in the inferred category. So in all resource categories, the project currently hosts 2.4 million ounces gold equivalent. In terms of the locations of these resources, what you see here on the following slide is essentially the locations. So we have the principal structure. Most of our high-grade mineralization sits on what we call the Escondida structure. This is a 5-mile long, 8-kilometer long structure which currently has 3 main ore bodies, which is Escondida, and within Escondida itself we have the Escondida Far West, we have Escondida Central, and also Escondida East. We also have the high-grade Martina chute, which is sitting at depth, and also the recent discovery that, called Zoe. For those of you who have been following the company, you would have seen these results coming out during the year. Zoe for us was a really just a fantastic discovery, both from not only does it make a material impact to our resource as a company, but as an exploration discovery, it really was fantastic because it is quite surprising. On surface, the Zoe vein does not look like anything special. Our exploration guys went in, said, look, we have enough smoke here, let's drill deeper. And right literally 20 meters or 60 feet below our feet on surface, you get into this very, very high-grade mineralization. So Zoe for us was a real game changer in terms of not just making a material impact on the resource, but also in terms of how we explore and look for new resources elsewhere through the project. So now what I would like to do is take you through the economics of a future mine at Cerro Moro. As I mentioned at the beginning, the very high grades translate to very, very low cash costs. What you will also see is that this is a fairly modest scale project. We're talking about a throughput or a mining rate of about 1,000 tons per day. And what you will see is that even at these relatively modest throughputs, the project has the potential to generate in excess of 200,000 ounces gold equivalent per year for the first years, and at very, very low cash costs. We are talking about cash costs around the $236 per gold equivalent ounce level. So this going forward will be one of the lowest cash cost producers in the world. What you will see is also to build this mine, very modest capex. We're talking about a number of about $200 million US, with a payback period of less than 12 months. So that really gives you a flavor for this is a very fast payback project and very, very low risk on the mining side. On slide 10, I'll take you very quickly through the production profile that I just mentioned. And again, I will flag that this PEA2, which we released in August, was based on our old resource. As the new resource gets incorporated into updated mining studies, you'll see a very large change on this. But in terms of the old PEA, we basically can produce, as I mentioned, 206,000 ounces gold equivalent per year for the first 3 years, followed by a declining production profile as we come into the lower grade resources. Now with the new resource, the November 2011 resource, what you will see is that we will be able to increase that production to around the 250,000 gold equivalent ounces per year and maintain that for at least 6 to 7 years. So what you will see is in the next mining study we do, which we do expect to complete in the first quarter of this year, what you will see is a very large impact on both the production profiles and also the project economics, and of course very positive changes there to the economics. So what I would like to do now is take you through the Cerro Vanguardia mine, which is a mine that's located about 100 kilometers or 60 miles to the west of us. Again, what you will see in this slide is very typical of these systems. Typically they are mined through open cuts close to surface, with the deeper portions being mined underground. What you see is typically the mineralization in these systems sits on very long structures, but within those structures you have very discrete ore shoots. And Cerro Moro geologically is very similar in the sense of we see the same thing. We see these very large structures, but very discrete ore shoots are developed along those. And we'll also add to that Cerro Vanguardia for Anglo Gold Ashanti has historically been one of its lowest cash cost producers over the last 15 years. In terms of the metallurgy, one of the nice things about the Cerro Moro mineralisation is that it's very clean ore. We get very high recoveries of both gold and silver. That, as you know, is a very important thing for us. The gold recoveries with the plant that we have designed at the moment are about 95%. In the last economic study, we used 87.5% recovery for silver. We have been very conservative on that number, and I do believe that in the next study you will see an increase in that recovery on the silver numbers. So very clean ore, very straightforward processing. The final product of the mine will be a doré, so it's a gold-silver ingot, if you like, and that will be sent offshore to refineries for further production. So the final product here will be what we call doré. It's the physical metal. As I mentioned, for the updated mine economic study, what we will do is we will take the November 2011 resource, which was quite a large jump over the previous resource. We added well over 1 million ounces, a gold equivalent, and a very high quality ounces were added to that. So you will see in this next mining study, which we do expect to complete at the end of the first quarter of this year, you will see a very large jump, a nice jump in both the production profile and also the economics. We will also look at the possibility of increasing the throughput. The previous economic studies were completed at 1,000 tons of ore per day to the mill. We will now look at the option of 1,300 or potentially even beyond that tons per day to the mill. And we do expect to have all of those studies completed by the end of this first quarter of 2012. In terms of the project schedule, we will continue. One of the key attributes of the company, of this particular project, is it really is an exciting twofold strategy between the exploration and the development side. Obviously, exploration drilling, which is the growth, we're looking for new ounces here, will continue during 2012. That will continue unabated. We currently have 4 drill rigs on site and expect to keep those busy all during 2012. In parallel, the development studies, as I mentioned, we do expect to complete the updated mining study here for the end of the first quarter. That will then lead us into the second quarter, where we need to update the mining permits. Back in 2011, we do have currently in hand the mining permits for a 750 ton per day operation at Cerro Moro. What we will need to do is, once we complete this updated mining study, define the optimum throughput for the project, go back to the Santa Cruz Province, get that modified so that by the middle of the year we should have all of that permitting completed and be ready to make a production decision. And essentially, keeping in mind too that to build the mine, we're talking about 18 months. So if we get to the middle of the year, make that construction and production decision, we would be looking at first production for the first quarter of 2014. So now I'll take you very quickly through the exploration side. The development side, on the one hand, is very exciting because those high-grade ounces, they translate to very, very low cash costs on the mining side. But of course, one of the key things with these types of systems is that when you start the mine, you never ever have all your resources. So basically, this is a process that will continue, and over the years, you will continue to see this deposit grow. And that is one of the key attributes of these systems. You look at our neighbours, you look at Cerro Vanguardia, you look at Cerro Negro, they've all gone through the same process. You reach a point where you have a particular resource level, you make the production decision, but you do continue to explore, and you will see that these systems will grow with time. Cerro Moro will be no exception to this. So how do we explore a property like Cerro Moro? The central part of the Cerro Moro tenements are a block which measures 15 kilometres by 15 kilometres, or 10 miles by 10 miles. Our vein field, we have over 30 different veins known within that area. So the question is, how do our geologists explore? How do we look for the new ounces, the new resources, which are essentially the underlying value to the company? So the geologists have a number of tools at their disposition. There's a priority listing. We continually go through looking at how are we going to discover those new ounces. And essentially what we do is we do this ranking system where we put all the geological, all the geophysical, all the geochemical data together and come up with the geological ranking. So, and now essentially in terms of how do we discover the new ounces, we have potential to expand the mineralisation along strike from existing mineralisation. We have potential to expand at depth. One of the key things about the Cerro Moro deposit is it hasn't been drilled to a great depth. In fact, the bulk of the Escondida mineralisation has only been drilled to about 200 metres in depth. But we do know that at the Zoe discovery, for example, we do have mineralisation identified to at least 450 metres vertically. So we do have a lot more work to still do in terms of testing the depth extents to the known mineralisation. And of course we have brand new targets which we need to bring into the equation as well too. So we have this continued ranking process which then leads our geologists to guide the drill rigs. The drill rigs come in, and essentially as we get the results from these areas we will come out to market with them, and the idea is that probably for the middle of this year or the second half of this year we will show you the results of how the project has grown with a brand new mineral resource update. On slide 17 here, what we're looking at are what the geologists call long sections. So essentially imagine you're standing looking at these mineralized veins side on, the brown lines being the surface lines, and the hot colors being essentially the widest and highest grade parts of these ore systems. What you will see is that the Zoe discovery, for example, only just comes to surface, and in fact it really was a fantastic exploration discovery in terms of it has very little exposure on surface, but you can see the depth extent there going to at least 450 meters vertically. You will see comparable long sections for the Escondida mineralization, also the Gabriela mineralization, and particularly at Escondida, one of the key points to take away is that we have very shallow drilling. We only have drilling to about 200 meters, so we have a lot more work to do in terms of looking at potential depth extensions to the known mineralization. And of course for us, the key priority here is to identify another Zoe. These high-grade ounces are really what makes the Cerro Moro project tick. But interestingly, the Zoe ore shoot is sitting on a different orientation. It's an orientation that we didn't focus on previously. Previously, all of our exploration activities were focused on northwest trending veins. Now the fact that we see such a major ore shoot like Zoe sitting in this east-west position has really opened up our eyes to other possibilities for new discoveries here. And of course, we do have a number of east-west structures there still to test, and our activities going forward, as I mentioned, will be to add another Zoe to the mineral inventory here. On this next slide, I'll take you through the Zoe discovery. As I mentioned previously, this was a key discovery for us, both in terms of the material impact that this resource has on the project, but also in terms of its exploration and what does it mean for the discovery of new deposits on this project. Now, one of the interesting things about the Zoe discovery is that it has a very poor expression on surface. The vein itself is very poorly developed. It has very low gold and silver values on surface. It was really the combination of having anomalous gold and silver values that led our geologists to wish to drill it. And upon drilling, well, you can see the results there in those long sections. We have very, very high grade gold and silver mineralization, literally 20 meters below our feet. And as you saw from the resource slide, the November 2011 resource, the component of the Zoe discovery that went into the indicated resource category had an average grade of about 79 grams per ton, and those are exceptional grades in this business. There are very few projects globally that have those kind of grades. Of course, from a geological upside perspective, the fact that Zoe had very low grades on surface has also led us to rethink some of the other systems. We have drilled and looked at other veins that also had very low grades on surface. With the geological knowledge that we have gained from the Zoe discovery, we will now need to go back and take a look at those and make sure we didn't walk away from any other veins prematurely, which could also have Zoe-type mineralisation on them. The Zoe discovery in long section, again, imagine you're standing side on, looking at the vein, the magentas and the reds being the widest and highest grade parts of this ore shoot. Here you can see the vein only just makes it to surface. The bulk of it is sitting below surface. And what you can see is that very, very high grade mineralization very, very close to surface. And that really is one of the really exciting things about this project, in that, well, Zoe was a brand new discovery. We got the first drill hole into Zoe in March 2011. By November, it was already included in our resource. But what it means, the significance for other parts of the project, really is quite phenomenal. It really does suggest that there are a lot of other areas where we could have Zoe-type scenarios. In terms of growth for the company, the next slide also shows that it's not just a Cerro Moro story. We have a very large land package throughout the Santa Cruz Province. As I mentioned, Santa Cruz is really quite hot real estate these days. It's very difficult to pick up exploration properties now. There are a lot of companies operating down there. Really a combination, firstly, the geological potential. People are very comfortable that this is a relatively new district, lots of upside, lots of discoveries to still be made, but essentially within a very pro-mining province. So for us, for Extorre, it is not just a story about Cerro Moro, it's also a story about potential discoveries on adjacent properties. We have a very large land package throughout Santa Cruz, and we will continue to generate targets on those and ultimately drill those targets also. So from an investor's perspective, the key thing is news flow during 2012. As I mentioned, it will be this two-pronged strategy for the company of continuing to grow the Cerro Moro resource through exploration. In parallel, we'll have these mine development activities, these mine development studies ongoing. On the exploration side, we will have 4 drill rigs turning. As these results come to hand, we will go back to the market with those and continue to keep the market informed of new results. And that will give the market a good idea of how we're going about with the task of growing the deposit. On the development side, we do expect to have completed the updated mining study for the Cerro Moro project. That we do expect to have completed by the end of the first quarter 2012. That will be based on the November 2011 resource. And as I mentioned previously, you will see a very nice growth in both the production profiles and also the economic value, the NPV of the project going forward. So once we have the updated mining studies completed, we will need to go back to the province, this is the Santa Cruz Province, with our modified plans for the mine development. We do have the permits in hand for a 750 ton per day mining and milling operation. We will need to go back to the province with what we believe is the optimum throughput, and at the moment we will look at the 1,000 tons per day, 1,300 tons per day and 1,500 tons per day. Likely the optimum throughput will be around that 1,300 tons per day, but we will need to go back to the province and get that the permit modified. That is a very straightforward process. For those who are following Goldcorp's Cerro Negro operation, they have just gone through this process. That process took about 2.5 months to be completed. We also expect a very similar time frame for this permit modification for the Cerro Moro project. That will then of course take us to the middle of the year, and at that point we will have all the permits in terms of the provincial permits in hand, and we will have the technical studies completed on the mine development, and that will take us into a mine construction and mine development period. In parallel, we will also have exploration activities continuing on our regional exploration package in Santa Cruz, and we will also go back to the market with results from these as they do come to hand. So as I mentioned, this will be a very exciting year, another very busy year for us at the Cerro Moro project and within the Santa Cruz Province, as we continue to grow the resource base of the company and as we continue to push the Cerro Moro project along the path to development. So to round out the presentation, on slide 23, there is a list of analysts that do cover Extorre Gold Mines for people wishing to find out more information, independent research on what we've been doing, where we're going, and how we plan to do that. please feel free to contact the people indicated here. But as you will see, there is quite a good group of analysts that are covering us, and I do encourage you to please contact those people if you do require further information or independent information on Extorre. So thank you very much for your time today. We look forward to your continued support during 2012, which for Extorre will be another very exciting year in terms of both our exploration and mine development activities.